Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Let's Chat Reality. I'm Michael,
And I'm Molly.
and this is our first episode of season three of the podcast, of our 101st episode. And we are delving into two shows today: The Challenge All Stars Rivals, episode two, as well as The Traitors, season three, episode seven. Two great episodes, I thought. Molly,
Yeah.
what did you think?
Yeah, I enjoyed them both. I feel like there's all the drama happening every week and in the Traitors obviously, and then with the challenge, I feel like it's starting to actually now pick up in episode 2, so it's good to see that as well.
For sure. Yeah, I feel like with the challenge, we're getting a better sense now of kind of what the format is for the season. We're getting a little bit more on some of the other teams. I felt like the episode one very much focused on like John A. and Beth and Turbo and Nani's relationships. And now we're getting a little bit more from some of the other teams. And I will say, in the challenge world, we don't have to delve into it too much. There's a lot going on social media right now. There is a lot of Cara Maria has stirred up a lot of drama with some of her controversial political takes, and a lot of the others are weighing in. They're about to go start filming season 41 next week, allegedly, and now kind of up in the air that, Cara was expected to be on that cast, maybe not now, but yeah, a lot going on. Go check it out if you haven't, if you don't know what we're talking about, go check it out. It's a lot on Reddit. You can find a whole thread on it. It's everywhere. It's very it's a lot.
Yeah.
But anyways, going off of that, let's go into the actual episode of the challenge that we watched here. So like I said, we find out the format for the season. And it is that every daily challenge will have one winning team. So the challenge that we saw in episode one, I thought was going to be kind of like the week one daily challenge, but it really wasn't. It was just basically to find out the first four teams that had stars, and that's why they ended it right after that and didn't finish out the challenge. That's really all it was for. But we have our actual daily challenge here, and the winning team, we find out is the only one that's going to be safe from going into elimination. The rest of the house votes for one team to go in, and that the winning pair will then be able to select their opponent, which can be themselves if they need to get a star. If they so choose, they see the challenge and it looks like something they might excel at, they can choose to go in, or they can pick another team to go in. What do you think of that format?
I like it. I think it makes sense that the winners get to choose, and then it's only them who are safe for the week as well. And it allows there to be a lot of different variations of who could go in to elimination. So I'm in support of it. What about you?
Yeah, I like the fact that there's a house vote. I like a house vote. I think that it makes it so everybody cares. Like everybody is strategizing every week. I feel like sometimes we get formats where, like, it's a girls' day or it's a girls' week, and so the guys don't really care what's happening, and then vice versa. It's like every other week you care, every other week you don't. Sometimes, they'll have some sort of like, whether it's the tribunal or whatever they're calling it, where like three or four teams only have the power for the week, and then everyone else is just kind of like sitting ducks and they don't have any power to choose who goes in at all. So they're kind of just like lying around all week, maybe trying not to get themselves voted in, but otherwise don't really care. So I like a house vote because I feel like everybody's kind of more invested in what's
Yeah.
happening because everybody gets a vote. Now, what I don't love is the fact that there's no penalty for getting last in the challenge. I always like when there's a penalty for that because it makes everybody try a little bit harder. And so here it's just like kind of like, we saw it this week. Like, we'll talk about it, but basically every team quit the challenge. And yeah, I would have too. Don't get me wrong. But like, there was no penalty for them doing that when they kind of know that they weren't going to win, probably. So that I don't love. But
Yeah, I think that maybe for other challenges, we'll see them maybe not quit as much. I don't know. I feel like this one, because it's a little bit more of an extreme one,
yeah.
that it did happen that way. But I can see why that could be a problem in general, just because when the losers doesn't have any consequence, then like once you know you're gonna lose, like you're like, okay, whatever.
Yeah, and I don't think like I agree with you. I don't think that in the future they're going to be so blatantly quitting, but I feel like maybe they're just going to be like not trying quite as hard, like not exerting all of their energy if they don't have to. If they think like, oh, another team is so far ahead, like what's the point in even really trying? They'll just kind of like do the bare minimum to finish out. But we'll see. Hopefully that won't be an issue. These are all stars. Maybe they're just kind of like more in it, to test themselves and for the love of the game. And hopefully we'll get, not that won't be so blatant, but we will see. We have a lot of season left to go here, but the challenge we have here is called Edge of Glory. They are on top of a 55-foot story building with a giant plank hanging off of it. There's an equation that the teams have to solve. Then, once they have the answer, one team member has to grab 4 flags, but they are tied together. So, if the team member who's grabbing the flags falls, then their rival is going to fall right with them. So we what did you think when before any of the teams went, what did you think of that challenge?
Well, I don't mind heights, so I think I would have been okay with it, but I know a lot of people do not like heights. And I feel like, I mean, that's what makes the challenge exciting though, is that like you do get those extreme kind of things that you get to see the challenge players do. So I didn't mind. Like, I mean, I think it's makes for an exciting episode. So what do you think?
I mean, I have a paralyzing fear of heights,
Yeah.
so this is literally my worst time. And actually, this is a commonality that you're going to see me say between this challenge and the one we saw in Traders this week.
Yeah, I know. I was like, I feel like Michael's having some trauma happening.
Yeah, someone was trying to traumatize me this week for sure. I don't know who has it out for me, but yeah, I no, I would not have done this. I don't even know if you would have gotten me to go in the elevator. So I this was awful for me. But yeah, I agree with you in the sense that like this is a challenge that you really only see on the challenge. Is what separates it from a show like Big Brother or even Survivor, where you kind of get like you're confined in both of those shows to the space that they're filming in, like whether it's like on the island of Fiji or on in the Big Brother house itself. Whereas here they have kind of the whole city that they're filming in, which is different every season, at their disposal, and they're able to do these wild crazy challenges. And
Mhm.
I wouldn't want to do it, but that's what they're signing up for. And I think that this is totally like a fair game challenge, that they know that they're probably going to get something like this when they sign up to go on the show. So I had no problem with the challenge necessarily, but I, I don't blame any of them for quitting. That's for sure. But we first up here are Davon and Shane versus Ashley and Anissa. And Anissa is really the first one to basically not even try to grab a flag. Like, she's not even going to go up there. Just she and TJ kind of start sparring a little bit, which is funny to see because, they have a long, long history. Like, Anissa's been around since longer than TJ has. So maybe if you were watching it without having known that history, you might think like, "Ooh, that was a little like I don't know that I would stand up to TJ in that way." But they go way back, like that was friendly banter, but it was funny. And yeah, I mean, she was kind of the first one to set the stage for the ability to quit, and then I think everyone else that went after, it was easier for them to just kind of decide to do that because they weren't the first. They were like, okay, Anissa's already kind of set the stage here. Like, Beth going next right afterwards just kind of does the same thing as a breakdown, and then many after are also not going to do it. So, what was that surprising to you? What did you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't know all of these players that well. Like, I don't know if they in the past have been afraid of the heights challenges and stuff like that. There have been similar challenges like this, but I think because there isn't the consequence of the last place, that kind of inspired that a little bit more. But I mean, I would have liked there to be, I guess, a little bit more of a competition here. But I mean, it happened, so it is what it is.
Yeah, I was a little bit surprised that so many teams, like, didn't even try just because we've seen, like, I guess we usually see heights over water, I feel like is a more
Mhm.
common thing that we see on the challenge. They'll do oftentimes, like, the trivia challenge will be something like that, heights over water, but we've certainly seen similar challenges to this before, but never, to my memory, this many teams just refused to do it. Like, this was a first to my memory, at least, that, basically only 2, 3 teams even got any flags at all. I think Davon got one that we saw in the first round, and then Adam and Steve got all 4 flags in 6 minutes and 32 seconds. I kind of figured that they were going to be the winners because I was like, oh, like, multiple teams before them have, like, the one was the most we had seen before that. So I was
Mhm.
like, oh, they got all 4. Like, Adam and Steve were going to win this, and then Fessy and Amber go a few rounds later, and they get in 1 minute and 50 seconds, which is wild. I mean,
Yeah.
nobody was going to beat that.
No, that was impressive. And I chose last week. I said they were my winners, so I was happy to see them do well. I mean, obviously this
Yeah.
was an interesting challenge because a lot of the teams quit, but I was like, yes, maybe they are gonna win. But we'll have to see. And I mean, impressed. Obviously, that's an incredible time.
Yeah, I mean that your winner picks looking pretty good here, I would say.
Yeah.
That was very, very impressive. But Fessy does really, really well in dailies, just in general. Like, he's known every season that he's been on a very common winner of a daily. He excels at those, I would say, more so than eliminations even. But yeah, but that was even shocking. Like, that was crazy. But yeah, I mean, Frank and Sam, Kelly and Sylvia, Katie and Veronica, Ashley K and Dario, and Big T and Corey all quit without getting any flags. And Katie, I thought, was funny because she was like, TJ, I wasn't going to do this. Like, don't even try. Because she's had some traumatic experiences with heights challenges on the challenge. She has multiple times when she's fallen from heights challenges, like, busted her face open. Like, she's gotten injured multiple times on these challenges. So, like, if I were her, I wouldn't do another heights challenge. Like, I don't care what the consequence is. Like, send me home, throw me into elimination, whatever, not doing it. So I did not blame her for 1 second.
Yeah. Agreed.
But we actually kind of get an unprecedented ending to this challenge because before the last 3 teams got a chance to go, which was Turbo and Nani, Devin and Leroy, and Melissa and Nicole, the weather started acting up. It started, I guess, a rainstorm came up, and TJ gave them the option of either coming back tomorrow to finish the challenge or just basically forfeiting and allowing Fessy and Amber to take the win here. So they all decide to forfeit, and Fessy and Amber win. So what did you think of this choice that they gave them? Would you have wanted to go back the next day if you hadn't gotten a chance to go, or would you have just given them the win there?
I think I would have given them the win just because, I mean, I don't know, maybe if I felt like really confident that I could beat that time, but I don't know if I would have wanted to try that again, like the next day. If I hadn't gotten a chance to do it, I'd be like, okay, this is a sign that maybe I shouldn't do this.
Yeah, I think imagine they come back and then you still, like, get up there and realize you can't get yourself to do it. Like, that would be like to make them do all that production, take you all the way over there and then still have that happen. Yeah, I wouldn't have wanted to come. That would have been a perfect excuse to, like, not really quit, but you gave me an option and I'm not taking it. So that would have been a perfect solution for me to not have to do it and kind of get out scot free there. But yeah, so all 3 of them decided that they wanted to forfeit. Fessy and Amber win. Then they all go back to the house and the strategy starts. So Frank kind of kicks things off and is on the couch with Nani, Ashley, Nicole, and Amber, and recommends that Adam and Steve have the least amount of connections in the house from his purview, so they should be the vote for the house vote to go into elimination. Now, Adam and Steve, have competed with a few people. Nicole, in particular, kind of says that she can't vote for them because she is friends with Adam. She was on All Stars 4 with both of them. But I would say for the most part, yeah, like a lot of these cast members don't, to the best of my memory, have any history with Adam and Steve. So I felt like this was a good call, but you don't often want to be the first person to throw out a name, so especially so openly. So, did you think that this was a good move for Frank to kind of get the ball rolling here?
I don't know. I feel like in general, yeah, it's like not always the best to be the first one to put a target on someone else. So might not be good, but I mean someone has to do it. So it's also like if no one else was saying a name, like we kind of have to say someone.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like yeah, I loved Frank for doing this because, you kind of get the strategy, kick things off, like, get the drama from this. So, love Frank for this. In terms of actually whether it was good for his game to do this, I would say that he maybe could have done it in a little bit of a more like private way with like maybe one person, and then like kind of
Mhm.
is sense how they're taking it, kind of how things are going, how people feel out, how people are feeling about that, and maybe you kind of get the bug in someone's ear, then they run and tell someone else, and then maybe you can kind of not be the person so easily that this comes back on as the ringleader, because it seemed like once Amber relayed this information to Veronica, then Veronica started warning Adam, and Adam pretty quickly figured out that it was Frank. I don't know quite how he got there in that logic, but he figured it out very quickly. And I wonder if maybe he had gone about it a different way, whether he would have so quickly figured that out that it was Adam and put that on him, because that could come back to bite him.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll have to see how that turns out.
Yeah. So like I said, Veronica does warn Adam that his team might be the house vote here. He knows it was Frank. So then Adam tells Fessy, who has the power to pick their opponent, Fessy and Amber. So he tells Fessy that he would like to go against either Frank and Sam or Ashley and Dario, because he also kind of put Ashley in that conversation, kind of, I guess, figured that Ashley might have had something to do with it as well. So he wanted to go against one of those two teams to an elimination. Now, if you were in Fessy and Amber's position, would you want to give Adam and Steve who they wanted in elimination, or would you have kind of not taken that into consideration at all?
I think I would listen to what they would have to say, but maybe not actually act on it because obviously it's their decision. They're the ones in the power position there. So I don't know. I don't like maybe it's like the first week, so maybe I would give them what they wanted, but it's also a game that you have to think about yourself as well. So
Yeah, I mean, look, if they put in either of those two teams against Adam and Steve, a big team's going to go home. Like all three of those teams are, I would say, three of the top half of this cast. So I don't know. That's a dangerous move because either way, a strong team is going to be potentially coming after you. So, but then I would say Fessy and Amber are also a strong team. So it's not like, some weak team that somehow got the win this time and might never get it again that, anyone's going to be okay going against. And now you have a target on your back. Like, I don't know. If I were Fessy and Amber, I might not be too scared of most of these teams coming after me. So
yeah.
I don't know. But I think that if you give Adam and Steve what you want, then maybe they won't come after you. Like maybe you just kind of hope that they win. But I don't know. It's a dangerous thing to put either of those two teams in. But I don't know. I think I might have done it just in hoped that Adam and Steve would still pull out the win, and then you gave them what they want, and hopefully you can kind of come out of this week without too much blood on your hands.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I mean obviously they didn't end up doing that, but I think it would have made sense. as well.
Yeah.
As long as Adam and Steve still won, like then that would have been fine. But if it
Right. I think maybe
wasn't,
you look at what the challenge is because
yeah,
you go into elimination, you see what the setup is. You might not know exactly what the challenge is, but just based on that, but you can kind of
yeah,
have a pretty good idea whether it's something super physical or more mental. And if I saw that it was something physical, which this really wasn't, and that was the thing, but like not knowing that, like going into elimination, this might be my mindset that I say, okay, if it looks like something pretty physical, then maybe I'm okay putting in Frank and Sam or Ashley and Dario because you're putting them against like a strong guy team. That if it's something very physical, a guy team versus a guy girl team, it's not an obvious win, of course, but like maybe there's an inequality there that might work in Adam and Steve's favor. So I don't know. I think that might be my thought process. If it's something more mental, then maybe have a backup option. But if it's something physical, then maybe go with that.
yeah, agreed.
Well, Adam and Steve do end up being the house vote, and Amber and Fessy pick Beth and Jonna as their opponents. Now, I actually really thought that they were going to put Nicole and Melissa in
Mhm.
because Amber thought that Nicole was the one who ratted out their conversation, their strategy conversation earlier, and wanted to throw in Nicole and Melissa because of that. And I was feeling really bad for Melissa going into the elimination because I was like, oh God, like she had nothing to do with this. And it from our purview, Nicole didn't either, actually. So I kind of felt bad for both of them that they were getting thrown under the bus for something Veronica did. But yeah, I was really thinking it was going that direction, and then they kind of threw a curveball and put in Beth and John A. So, what did you think about all that?
Yeah, I was surprised to see that Beth and Jonna were the ones that went in, and I feel like, I mean, it made sense from like the confessionals we saw when Fessy was saying that he was, or was it at the challenge itself? He just didn't want there to be someone like strong coming after him and Amber, because if they were to put up like a bigger threat of people then of the rivals going in, then it doesn't put them in as good of a place in the game itself. So I think it makes sense because then they knew that Adam and Steve would be able to make it out and like have
Hmm.
still have them on their side.
Yeah, I mean, this was a pick that they made, really assuming that Adam and Steve were going to win this. I think like this was, kind of giving them, throwing them a major bone by doing
Yeah.
this. But it gets out a very, I mean, I hate to say weak team because Johnny's a strong player in particular. Like Johnny's won 2 All-Star seasons back to back. So she is no slouch in this game, of course, but Beth is really weighing her down. And anyone who is paired with Beth, I think, kind of has to assume at this point that might be an early exit. Because Beth not only is like not super strong physically, she's gonna cause a lot of drama. She's not a social butterfly by any means, and we already saw that on in just the 2 episodes of the season. So
Yeah, I never
yeah,
knew her before, and now I'm like, wow, I really know a lot about her.
yeah. I mean, she's a character. But she's the most OG person I think on this cast. Like, and there's a lot of OGs on this cast, but she was, I mean, she's from season 2 of The Real World, I believe, Miami. So she goes way back to the early '90s of this show. So she's certainly in the older crowd of this at this point. Like she's never been the most physical, but especially these days, having her as your partner is not ideal, I would say. So
Yeah,
I felt bad for Janae for that, and then look, they did their best in this elimination, I would say. So I'll explain what the elimination is. It's called pole position. So one partner goes to, there's a dice sitting there, a big dice with different colors, 4 different colors, and then there's a tube with 4 different sections that with corresponding colors. And whatever color the dice lands on, their partner has to go into the tube, into that color, and put a pull into that set color, that section. And so in round one, they do 5 rounds. In round one, they put one pull in, whatever color it is. Round two, they put 2 pulls in, etc., so forth, so on and so forth, for 5 rounds. And then at the end of those 5 rounds, both team members have to go through the tube into from one side to the other side and kind of wade through the poles that they've put in. I didn't quite understand this at first. And
Yeah.
then once it got going, I was like, oh, okay, I get it. I think I get it. So hopefully my explanation made sense at all, because it didn't to me when they first did. But um, they both kind of got through getting their polls in around the same time, but then Adam and Steve easily won here in the end.
Yeah.
But I think that Beth and John A did their best. I don't think that they were ever probably going to win this, but they didn't embarrass themselves.
Yeah, I was honestly impressed that they were close. Like, I feel like in parts of it, I was like, wait, are they gonna win? Like, is it gonna be an upset? But obviously, no, that didn't happen.
Yeah, no, but so Beth and Janae are eliminated here. I would say not super surprised to see that they're the first ones out. I think that if it wasn't now, it was going to be in the next couple of rounds. I never really foresaw them going to the end game, so sad to see them go. But I'm not shocked that they're out early here. But then at the end of the episode, they go back to the house. This is something that we don't normally see. Usually, challenge episodes end at the end of the elimination, but we actually see them go back to the house. We see Beth and John A actually packing their bags, saying goodbye. That's something we never see on the challenge, at least in recent years. So that was kind of cool. But then we get a conversation with Sylvia and Kellyanne that goes left very, very quickly. Sylvia, I guess, is saying that Kellyanne is hard to get along with, doesn't listen, and then Kellyanne basically says like she, has things at home, she wants to go home. Sylvia says the quote, "You have dogs, I have a family." What did you think of this comment?
Well, I felt bad for Kellyanne. Like, her dogs are her family, and like she cares a lot about them. Like, maybe Sylvia just doesn't understand that and like is taking that out on her. Just like I didn't like it. It just felt very like I didn't like that comment.
Yeah, it felt very like a superiority thing.
Yeah,
Like, oh, I have a family, I have kids, you don't. Like, your family doesn't matter. Your life back at home, you have nothing to go home to. What are you going like? What do you need to go home? You don't have any responsibilities. I have a child. So I don't like the whole superiority thing. And generally, I like Sylvia, but here I expected like of their rivalry, I felt like I was going to be on Sylvia's side. Like, if I don't really have a strong memory of All Stars 3 of their beef. I don't remember like if I was like specifically on one side or the other, but here
yeah,
I was certainly on Kellyanne's side. Like, I did not like that comment. Now, would I be annoyed if my partner kept saying that she wants to go home? Yeah, probably.
yeah.
But that was just out of bounds. I was out of line. Too far, too personal.
Yeah, I don't know. It was crazy that the episode ended that way too, because what you're saying, it's like that's pretty rare for that to happen. That we get to see them go back to the house, and then there was drama. Obviously, that's why we saw it probably, but
Right.
like the drama that came up from it, which was like such a uncalled for comment. Also, like why are you bringing this up? Like everyone has stuff back home in general. Like you don't have to act like you're superior than everyone else.
Yeah. And I think that they probably ended with this too, because the elimination was not necessarily the most tense in terms of who was going to win. So I think that
Yeah,
this way you were ending on an actual, like, a little bit of a cliffhanger. And yeah, I liked that they did this, that they ended this way, because it wasn't, a lot of times when you get a cliffhanger, it's like, oh, you get a cliffhanger instead of an elimination in the episode. And
hmm,
that's annoying, because then you feel like you're missing something.
yeah,
But here it's like, oh, we got everything that we expected to get in this episode plus more. So I liked
yeah.
that. And yeah, I'm curious to see. I don't know if we pick back up in the middle of this fight again because it didn't say to be continued, if I remember right. So I don't know exactly where if we're going to pick things up, after this or with the aftermath or continuation. But I'm excited to see. I'm excited for next week. I think so far this is a strong start for the season.
Yeah, no, I think so too. So, shall we get into the Traitors now?
Yeah, speaking of good episodes,
Yeah. I
Molly.
was like, the cliffhangers, we always get those for the Traitors.
Traitors is
Uh,
known for their cliffhangers. Yeah, I
yeah.
mean, I don't remember ever getting an episode of The Traitors without a cliffhanger.
No, I don't think that's possible.
No.
um, but so picking up where we left off from the last episode, we're back in the turret in the start of this one. So the traders are deciding who should be murdered, and then they're just all fighting basically because they don't know who to choose. And Rob won't tell Danielle and Carolyn who has a shield from his group from the previous week's challenge or whatever they call them mission, the mission.
Yeah. What did you
Um,
think of that?
yeah, I don't know. I was interested why Rob wasn't wanting to tell them because like he should be on their side there. Like if you're a traitor, you should tell everyone like who else is a traitor, like every information that you have. So I was kind of surprised. What did you think?
Yeah, I mean, it felt like it was almost like a punishment. Like,
Yeah,
okay, you kids are being bad, so I'm not going to tell you who has a shield,
yeah,
which was weird. But I mean, also, I guess maybe he thought that they would spill that Rob told them who had the shield, like that maybe at breakfast the next morning or something that one of them was going to slip and say something that, oh yeah, like, I heard that so and so had the shield from your group, and then somehow that would get back that Rob leaked that information. I don't know. I don't know what he was afraid of by telling them that, but because it seems like murdering somebody who had a shield would just not benefit him either. So you're punishing yourself kind of by
yeah.
doing that, unless he was kind of feeling like, oh, I'm not actually going to let them murder somebody who has a shield. Like I'll kind of make that person my untouchable and shift them in a different direction. But I don't know. That was weird.
Yeah, and I feel like we didn't really see that part of their conversation though. Like if they brought up someone who did have a shield, like Rob didn't try to steer it away from what I
I honestly
remember.
forgot who had a shield, so I don't know if they did.
Yeah. Well, I know that Dylan had a shield
Okay, yeah, because the
because
only
he
one I
won
remember,
rock, paper,
Carolyn had a
scissors.
shield. That was the
You
only one that
can't
I
forget
remember.
about him being the rock, paper, scissors king.
Oh, that's
Um,
right. Or rock, paper, scissors, king. Yes.
yeah. And then I don't know who else, but I know Dylan, and he did bring up Dylan's name. So I was like, did you not know?
Yeah. Yeah, that was weird.
but
I don't know.
I don't know. But the turret was exciting as always, but they did decide on who to kill, and it ended up being Derek. Obviously, Danielle was very sad about that one, and she was pushing back against everyone, so they had to just decide, and Derek was the winner. The winner who had to lose. But I felt like I wasn't that shocked by that move just because I mean last week's episode I also mentioned like oh wait, it might be Derek, but I was hoping it wouldn't be because he was obviously like a good game player and on to some of the traders, which in particular was Rob, which was I feel like a strong move that Rob decided to go against there. I'm not strong. Like it was like aggressive, like in a way that like I was like he probably shouldn't have done it that way because now everyone is going to look at him still, and obviously foreshadowing, they do. But in general, like Danielle was obviously sad to see one of her friends, which I don't even know how close they really are, but
I
um,
was surprised by that too. Like, I
yeah,
mean, she seemed excited when, like, when Derek was in the cage and they first, like, took the curtain off and it was revealed. Danielle was really excited to see him. It seemed like so. I didn't, but they've never done a season together before, so I didn't really realize that they had like a strong friendship. Like, I just kind of thought they were like, had met at maybe at different reality star events, things like that, charity events, but I didn't really expect that they were that close, that Danielle was going to be sobbing
yeah,
when he was murdered. Like that, and that felt real. Like that didn't feel like bad acting to me. That felt like I feel so guilty and I can't believe that I let this happen.
Yeah. I know, and I think for that, like, that reaction was real as well, and I don't know, I mean, some people who were in breakfast that morning were thinking maybe that was a lot from Danielle, but, I mean, we've seen her be a lot already this season, that this one didn't seem like a lot because we know she's a
Yeah.
traitor and that she didn't wanna be part of murdering her friend, and then she had to be, so obviously she feels guilty for that reason.
Yeah, I've said all season that I feel like Danielle's not doing a great job as a trader, but the more that I see things, I feel like Danielle is doing a better job than we have been thinking that she's doing. Like, of course
Mhm.
there are things that she's done, like in especially I think in that earn challenge where she was like randomly like saving Derek, not saving Derek, like not using it on herself. Like that was I think the weirdest, most obvious traitor like thing that she's done. But otherwise it feels like every time because they do these which I love. They're doing these kind of like exit interview things this season. I forgot what they're calling it, but it's on YouTube. And with the most recently banished and murdered contestants, and they're showing them who the traitors are, and we get their first reactions to who the traitors are. And almost every time, Danielle is the one that they are most shocked by. Like Carolyn too, but like they are usually pretty surprised to see that Danielle's a traitor, and they're saying, "Oh my god, like I just thought she was some emotional like person, and that was all
Mhm.
real." That I don't know that she's as suspicious to them as it would feel like they should be.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe she's doing a better job than we think.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, this week she didn't even get talked about at all. So obviously, like, she has to be doing something right,
Yeah.
if no one's suspecting her. But obviously, because Derek was murdered, then Rob is trying to say, oh, someone's framing him because why would they kill Derek after Derek was basically just saying that it was going after Rob particularly hard anyway in the last roundtable, but then also, which we also hear next up after the breakfast is that Dylan tells Rob that Derek mentioned that if he's murdered, to watch out for Rob and Brittany. So extra eyes on Rob now that
Hmm.
Dylan has this information from Derek, and Rob was like, "Uh oh, what's happening here?" But I feel like in general, Dylan still trusted Rob after that, which I was surprised to see. But Rob has a way with his words, and he was charming Dylan, so it worked out okay for this part. Obviously, not for everyone, but for Dylan, he was like, "Okay, I still trust Rob."
Yeah. I mean, look, I don't. I could see this why Rob would do this, like keep kind of getting rid of all the people that are going after him, and then using that as a way to say he's being framed. Like I can see it. I can see that potentially working on some people and thinking
Mhm.
no trader would be that obvious to just keep getting rid of people that are going after them. But I think that there are people, especially the non gamers, that think so, that are not used to watching these shows. And they think so just on a basic strategy level. And they're thinking, okay, if I'm a trader, I'm going to go after who is coming after me. And they just don't think on that, like that, oh, that's too obvious. So I'm going to do that so that people are thinking that it's me, but it's not me. Like, I
Yeah.
just feel like this kind of like next level, like strategy, it's just goes right over their head. And I think that at a certain level, you just kind of have to like, not do something that would be too obvious and that's going to be enough to trick half the cast on a show like this.
Yeah, and I feel like in general, like every trader also has a different gameplay. So you could think from one thing like that someone is doing that could act like a trader, but maybe they're doing it to not seem like they're the trader. Like there's so many mind games you could be playing with yourself that it doesn't make it so obvious to everyone. So I feel like overall, like it sometimes can skate by, but you just never know.
Yeah. Like I think if you were to have like a cast of Survivor play this game, where in new era Survivor, all of them are super fans, like they're all like, they're all gamers with that mindset that like they're like, doing voting blocks and, coming up with these like complex strategies. And like,
Mhm.
if that's your cast, then yeah, like I feel like you can kind of play those mind games and like, you have to think 5 steps ahead and like, really be so careful with like who you're murdering and who you're like how to steer people away from what you think. But I feel like on trainers, like you just have to kind of do the very bare minimum of not making yourself suspicious, and that is going to be enough for half the cast to take. And I feel like Rob is playing as if he's playing with, I think, better players than he probably actually is, and I think that ended up working against him in the way that like he's just being too obvious by murdering people that are coming after him, and that's making most of the cast suspicious of him. That I think if he didn't do that, he probably would have been able to get away with making it a little further here.
Yeah. Agreed. But next up, we have the mission, which obviously you did not like watching. But
Nope.
everyone has to pair up. So Gabby and Carolyn are a pair, Rob and Sierra, Dylan and Tom, Danielle and Brittany, Ivar and Sam, Chriselle and Dolores. And with each pair, they have to go head to head with another pair, and then the winners will receive shields. So each of those pairs has to hold hands. And when they first started explaining this, I was like, they're holding hands? Like, this sounds like the easiest thing ever. And then they put it inside a glass box and then starts coming in with different insects and animals and things that you don't really want to have on your hands. So they have to last 8 minutes. And if they do, then they get $4,500 to the prize pot. And we see that some of these pairs were not so happy, particularly Chriselle was not thrilled. She did not last a second in there. Once the creatures started coming down on her hand, but other teams were doing really well. In particular, the winning pairs were Danielle and Brittany, Sam and Ivar, and Rob and Sierra. And I was impressed by all of them. I feel like besides like the ones that quit early on, but
It
I
was only
feel like
Chriselle.
they did a really good job because they were also like they didn't have any really protective besides their eyes. Like they didn't have anything around them that was like
No.
protecting them, and they were getting hit from their heads too, like
Oh my
and
god.
things coming all over them. Like I was so like, wow, they really like they needed like a 2 hour shower after that. Like
Yeah.
it was a lot.
I so like when it was limited to their hands, I was like, okay. Now, probably in all likelihood, I would have lasted not even as long as Chriselle did, but I think if I really needed to win this, like if this was something that like it was like immunity on Survivor and I knew I was going to go home if I didn't win it, I maybe could have lasted if it was only limited to my hands. As soon as I saw a bucket that was about to be poured on my head with what maggots, what was it? Like
Yeah, I think there were maggots.
I I would have sued this entire company. Like no. No, no, no. I would have nightmares for weeks. Like that is literally my worst nightmare, I think.
It reminded me of Fear Factor.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
seriously. I no, 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 there is no money in the world that is worth the feeling that I'm gonna have for so long that there's something on me, like something in my hair, something on my back. Like no, just no.
Yeah, it was fun to see like Rob consoling Sierra though, because she obviously was not having a good time with it, and he was just like, "Tell me about your favorite restaurant where you like to go in New York," or like just
He was
like
doing a
that.
really good job with her.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he was doing a good job. Like I would do that. Like I could just like talk about something totally unrelated to what we are doing and then make it through. I think so. I don't have the same fear of insects that you do.
Well, like,
Um,
I think with the snake even, like,
oh, the snake. Yeah, I
I
have
could
had a snake
maybe be
around my
okay with
neck.
that. Having my Britney Spears moment, like, talking with Sam, like, "Oh, would Britney talk about the snake? What'd you think?" But no, no, the maggots was too much for me. That would
Yeah. Yeah,
that
the
would be
snake I would have been fine with. I've already had a snake around my neck, so
ooh, where?
but that was on I didn't want it, but it was in Morocco and they just put it around my neck
What do you
without
mean you
me
didn't
asking.
want it?
Yeah, that's another story. It was if you're ever in Morocco and Marrakesh, stay away from the snake charmers because they're aggressive.
Ew.
Um, yeah, but it made for a good picture. If you scroll back all the way back to 2018, you can see it. Um, but but it was definitely an intense one,
Yeah.
and um, well, and the shields here I feel like didn't really. I mean, they did matter. Well, obviously, like the shields are important. You want to get a shield, but if you couldn't stand these insects and animals, then you weren't gonna last.
Yeah, like, I just don't think that they make the challenges important enough on this show to
Yeah,
make it worth me going through that. Like,
yeah,
if it was yeah, like, if it was for something that was more important, but, like, I'm sorry, for $4,500 for the prize pot and a shield to avoid getting murdered, like, where unless I would really thought that I was in danger, no, there's no
yeah. For sure. But next up, then we go back to the castle, and Tom Sandoval, everyone, is pushing Rob's name again. Well, he was bringing it up because he's obviously been part of the conversation, so everyone trying to go for Rob, and now Tom is like, yes, Rob is a traitor, and specifically tells that to Dylan and Ivar. But then Rob tries to convince Sierra, Chriselle, and Dolores that it's Brittany because obviously Rob knows his name is coming up again and he's trying to turn it against Brittany. But I feel like Tom's points here were obviously valid. We know what Rob is a traitor and everything he was saying or pointing to the facts. So it was interesting to see. I was like, wow, I'm actually supporting Tom here and what he's saying and that he's right that that Rob is a traitor.
look, even a broken clock is right twice a day. Well, if you accuse everybody in the castle, including Alan, probably, eventually you're gonna stumble upon a traitor. Like, I guess I'll give him slight credit for at least like not backing down against Rob and sticking with his convictions. But I mean, we've seen him accuse everybody in this castle, so do with that
Yeah.
information what
And
you will.
this one did land this time, but
Yeah.
it's probably not going to happen again for him. Um,
No.
but then we go to the round table, and it begins with Dylan explaining that Derek told him the night before that Rob and Brittany were suspects, or he thought that Rob and Brittany were traitors. But then Brittany was shocked to hear that. She defends herself there. And then Tom comes in here as well as Sam to start accusing Rob as being a traitor. And overall, like obviously the points there that we are kind of hearing over and over again, like why are you going after these threat or like the people that like who are getting killed were all people who were coming after Rob and those were good reasons to think Rob was a traitor. But then Rob was trying to defend himself. His last defense here, trying to then turn it back on Brittany. And Brittany is like, no way, it's not me. And Rob was complimenting her, though, and being like, well, I think that you're smart. Like, he was bringing in the gameplay that, like, he was hoping people would play, like, I think. But it's in the traitor house where you're like, just think about anything. What could be a reason why someone's a traitor? Oh, they were breathing too hard. And like the reason why he thought Brittany could be a traitor was too intense. Like it was like why was that a
Yeah.
thing?
I mean, I think that his point was like Brittany is the one of those options that he
Yeah.
was kind of going
She was
through.
only one.
She was the only one that has a gamer background that kind of knows the strategy well enough to be a good trader, and that she thought that like she could pull it off, whereas the others might not be able to pull it off as easily. And I think like this is we've seen now Rob do this 3 times, where this is kind of his thing is like just like having this long speech of like somebody's doing this and somebody's been pulling the strings and this person has been doing this, and you get everybody being like, who is he talking about, like, and then he stares at you and said Brittany. Like, I think the other times that he's done it, it's been somebody who, like, has a lot of suspicion on them already that, like, people have been talking about, and yes, like, Brittany's name did get brought up already, but I don't think that people were believing it as much as they did the other times that Rob has done this. Like, I think that people were just kind of not as convinced that it was Brittany, and so Rob doing this didn't quite land in the same way that it did the other times. That I think, like, there was already enough people were convinced enough that Rob was a traitor that I think this felt more like an act. It felt more performative than it has in the past when you're kind of looking at it through a different lens of thinking that this person is a traitor versus like this person saying this who you believe and think is a faithful trying to help you out. So I think once you kind of have that change of heart, you look at it a totally different way.
Yes, agreed. And I feel like this obviously that happened in this episode was that now Rob does get the majority of the votes, and he got 7 votes from the rest of the castmates. And I was surprised that I feel like, or I wasn't that surprised that Danielle and Carolyn voted for Rob, but I was feeling like if anyone didn't vote for them, like maybe didn't vote for Rob, like maybe they were not going to. But they obviously did. I'm glad that they did because they needed to get him out. Because I honestly, at that conversation, I wasn't totally sure like if Rob was gonna be the one getting voted out because he
Yeah.
is good at persuading people sometimes. But for
Mhm.
this time, he wasn't good enough, and he got the most votes. And then he
Yeah.
does reveal that he's a traitor.
Yeah.
So obviously, everyone is super happy, and they react like they found like the craziest thing in the world when they get a traitor.
I
Like it's
know.
like
I love
okay,
that it's like they just won the lottery.
yeah. Oh,
Like,
that's I was like trying to think of a good explanation.
yeah.
That's a good one. Basically,
But
they win the lottery by
what
getting a
I
traitor.
love sorry, going back to the voting, I love Chriselle's, consistency with doing a petty burn vote on Tom Sandoval. I love it, I support it, I would do the same. I don't care if he's, like, literally been confirmed by production to be a faithful, I'm still voting for him every week.
I know. I love that. We're continuing to see that feud, which is going to continue. I feel like for the whole season, which is amazing.
Yeah,
And yeah, so I hope she continues to do that.
I
But
do too.
I was happy and sad at the same time that Rob was getting got voted out here, just because I feel like it was time and that everyone was suspecting him, and so he wasn't really gonna last too much longer anyways. And he couldn't continue to come up with these amazing stories and can get his way out of it every time. So I was expecting it for this episode. But what were your thoughts?
Yeah, I was happy because I think I really am curious to see what happens now with Danielle and Carolyn alone in the turret because I feel
Mhm.
like Rob is such a commanding force in there and he's pretty much been getting his way every time. So I'm really curious to see what happens now that it's just the two of them and they can kind of do what they want and they don't have that other factor there kind of trying to bring them together if they're feuding or like just kind of throwing a name out there and kind of Danielle just kind of letting him take the lead. I'm curious to see what happens, and I don't know, if they're gonna let them recruit somebody now, or I mean, usually we would have maybe already seen Alan come in and say to them that they're gonna recruit somebody. It doesn't seem like that is at least this week, but maybe the following, maybe at the end of next episode, we'll see it. I don't know if they do have to recruit somebody. Who do you think they should recruit?
Yeah, I was thinking about that, and I'm not sure. I feel like they would maybe get Dylan, but
That would be
like
a
I
good
feel
option,
like
I think.
I like Dylan as a player, so I would want him to stay, and I don't want him to get murdered. So I feel like he's enough on their side already that maybe he could be persuaded to become a traitor if they asked him to. Or I think it would be fun to see Gabby as a traitor. She would have such funny comments, I feel
Yeah.
like. But I also like seeing her as a faithful and just like trying to suss out who people are and like all that stuff too. So I don't really know who they would go for. I don't think they would do Brittany because there's already suspicion on Brittany. So it's like, don't do someone who has any suspicion.
Okay, so I actually think that it might be smart of them to do Brittany, and here's why. Because Brittany does already have suspicion on her. So I think it would be easy enough to bring her in as a traitor, kind of very sneakily support that suspicion of her, or at least like not try to take the heat off of her. And then they put the votes on Brittany, get Brittany out, which I would be very sad about. I don't want them to do this, let me just say. But I think it would be smart of them too, because then they feel like they've gotten somebody out who's been a traitor the whole time. And then they feel everybody feels like, oh, maybe we've gotten out all the traitors, or maybe there's just one left. Like they feel like they're accomplishing, like they're getting somebody out who, like, you get the heat off of Danielle and Carolyn because they probably think at that point we've gotten out three traitors. There might not be two more. There might only be one, or maybe they more recently recruited somebody, and so now they're going to look at people who like have changed more recently in their view. Like maybe kind of the people like Danielle who have had suspicion on and off kind of the whole time. It seems like maybe they're not looking at her at all anymore because they feel like they've gotten out all the OG traders. So I don't know. I think that could be an interesting move to like bring somebody in just to kind of use them to sacrifice them and get them out right away.
Yeah, that would be interesting. I don't know if they're like savvy about thinking about that right now though, because I don't know. Like maybe they would think about it, but I also feel like Danielle wouldn't want to just like sacrifice her friend because now they've
And
made
that's
up.
what I don't think Danielle would do it
Yeah,
because it's Brittany. But I think in another world, that would be a smart move to kind of. I don't know. Is there somebody else who's not a trader who's been getting a lot of heat? I kind of don't think there is right now.
I don't think
I
so.
can't think of anybody else that
Yeah.
kind of fits that bill besides Brittany, just more recently. Um, so that's kind of the only option that I would think they would have if that was their goal. But yeah, I mean, if they're looking to get somebody who doesn't have a lot of suspicion, I think Dylan's probably their best option because I feel like he's kind of the most like confirmed faithful almost in a lot of people's minds.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know what they would do, but I kind of want them to recruit someone because I was surprised they didn't mention that at all. That they.
I look, I don't love a recruit. I just feel like it's kind of unfair
Mhm.
to the faithfuls because it's like, okay, now you have to like just start over basically. Like every suspicion, every thought process you've had of everybody, it's just like you have to start at square zero because now somebody's been turned into a traitor. So I don't know. I don't love it. I think that it's fine, like maybe in the first half of the season, but I almost feel like we're too far now that I feel like they shouldn't be able to recruit at this point.
Yeah, so maybe we're not gonna get a recruit this
But
season.
I think, yeah, I think if another trader goes out like next episode, I definitely think they will. I don't think they're going
Yeah.
to let them be down to one trader this early. But if two more faithfuls go home next episode, then maybe at that point, like starting with episode 8, like maybe they'll let them kind of keep going without.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. But at the end of this episode, Alan reveals that the next murder will be face to face, which is exciting. So those without shields will have to walk down the aisle of the church, and then the traitors will come in there to murder the one they choose. So it was very dramatic. I feel like at the end of the episode where everyone was walking into the church and they were just like, please, I don't want to die. It's like, okay, you guys like maybe don't need to be that dramatic.
I
But
loved this
yeah.
so much.
It was
Whoever
great.
thought, oh my god, giving them like the last words, last speech. Oh my god, the melodrama that we get from this show is just incredible. I love it so much. I thought this was
Yeah.
great. Yeah, so Murder in Plain Sight, or Murder in Plain Sight, Murder Face to Face is something that we haven't seen on U.S. traders ever, but we actually saw it in the most recent UK traders. I mean, kind of similar. It was very different in the way that they did it, but they basically like the traders picked four people who had to play a game, and it was like a kind of like a little card game, and whoever ended up with like the murder card at the end of it ended up being murdered. and then the Traitors came and revealed themselves and did a face to face. So they're doing it in a totally different way this time, but it is something that we saw recently on UK Traders, and I really love it. I think that it's a great cliffhanger, and I'm
Yeah.
excited to see whoever's murdered. Excited to see their reaction.
Oh yeah. Yeah, well speaking of cliffhangers, earlier in this episode we were talking about it just today that we have a great cliffhanger again. So
Yes, we
we'll
do.
have to see what
Yeah,
happens next week in the Traders, but I'm excited. This season has been great and it's been really fun to see the Traders also going at each other this season because I feel like that's not usually that very common.
yeah.
So we'll
One
have to
more,
see
yeah.
hopefully. Oh, I
One
was gonna
more
say
thing that I wanted
hopefully.
to bring up that I realized from the very beginning of the episode that we didn't was I loved when Gabby started talking about Ivar, not realizing that he
Oh.
was right there at the breakfast. And then
Yes.
Ivar had to be like, I'm right here. But that was really funny. And I mean, Gabby does her classic, I'm so dead, which I just love. I love Gabby so much.
I know,
She's
that was
such a
good. She's like,
gift.
glad I didn't say anything bad.
Yeah. I think I am already willing to say that I think if we did like a top 10 reality stars of 2025, Gabby's going to be on there this year.
Oh, yeah, for sure. She's the best.
Yeah. Gabby
But,
and Carolyn, I would say from this season of Traders. I think that Gabby and Carolyn are going to be on my list at the end of the year here.
yeah. And, I mean, well, Gabby didn't win a shield, so I really hope she's not one of the ones murdered, which
I
I don't think she
know.
is because with Carolyn and her being partners, like, I don't think Carolyn would do that to Gabby. So I don't know. Of the people left, like, I actually don't know who they're gonna murder.
I would say that I think the two most likely suspects, I think that Sandoval would be a good option.
Yeah.
Um I think maybe Chriselle I could see just because like I feel like Chriselle's kind of not close with either Carolyn or Danielle from what we can tell.
Mhm.
So I feel like she might be an easy compromise between them two. But I also feel like Sandoval would fit that bill. And I feel like Sandoval's kind of a little louder and he was on to Rob, so maybe they feel like he's very vocal with his opinions, and maybe they feel like, oh, we don't know who he's going to kind of like put his sights on next, and if it could be either one of them, and
Mhm.
he's very. I don't think he's persuasive. I don't think anyone takes him seriously, but I think that now that he was right about Rob, that maybe whoever he goes after next, they're afraid that if it's one of them, that people might take him a little bit more seriously next time. So I think that that would probably be a smart move for them to do him.
Yeah. Yeah, it could be between the two of them, but we'll have to see. Got the cliffhanger as always. But well, I'm excited for Thursday night because obviously Traders episode.
Always excited for Thursday
And
night.
we'll be covering it again next week. So make sure that you're subscribed for our episodes to get caught up every week when we talk about every episode that we're talking about. You can also watch along whatever shows we're watching, so you'll be in the know. So let's chat reality on Instagram and TikTok and wherever you get your podcasts. So we'll chat
Yes,
with
and
you.
there's we I forgot to keep forgetting to say this, but we have video podcasts on
Yeah.
available on Spotify, full episodes on video. So if you are just listening and you want to see our beautiful faces, be sure to go over to Spotify because we have full video episodes there.
Yes, and we're wearing matching shirts today of our Chat
Yeah,
Reality
we are.
logo. So if you were watching, you could half see the shirt. Now you can fully see the shirt. But yes, so thanks so much for listening. We'll chat with y'all next week.
Bye, everyone.